I'll log in.
Okay. Okay, so they're both lit up. Okay, good.
Okay, I've got you live on YouTube.
Okay, so they're both lit up. Okay, good.
Okay. Looks like you're live.
And then you'll be able to type the answers to people there too.
Yes.
If there's sound issues, maybe you can even ask that right up front. Do we have sound issues today? And if so, we can attempt to see if we can't slide some bar over or something.
Yeah. I'll see. I'll make sure that. Cool. I'm still checking. You can.
Well, this feels
I know you're live
professional
on
today. That would have to be behind the curtain.
Right. You can go ahead and start.
Good afternoon, everyone. You've come to the show Edge of Truth radio show. We're really happy to have all of you with us today again. My name is Will Gable, along with Sharon Quinn and Tryson Graham, and we're coming to you to do a follow-up here on what we covered last week, and Sharon's going to go over that over here, obviously. So the name of our show is Building a Case for the Third Way, and hopefully by the end of the show you will be able to bring that together in your mind as to what that third way is, because we're trying to lead you in a direction to be able to organize this information for yourself to see the third way we're talking about, because the way things are going in the country, this present way isn't really working that well. So again, we're happy to have all of you with us here on the Edge of Truth Radio. Sharon, you want to come in and take over?
Sure. Thank you, Will. And thank you, Tryson, for getting us technically hooked up again.
You're welcome.
It's always good to have a director, right? Okay. The third way is all about actually empowering you, because that is what everything is really all about. If we're not empowered, then it's not a government of the people, by the people, for the people. And I think what we're suffering from right now is, how did the people get lost? How did the people and the power of the people get lost to a group of people who don't even give a rat's ass about our Constitution, our freedoms, or possibly maybe anything? Seems like we're willing, like we're guinea pigs for a big social experiment under the guise of some horrendous virus. I'm not saying the virus doesn't exist. What I'm saying is, it is not what it is being exaggerated, and it is not what people are saying it is. We now know that because there's just silly things that, even if you've got a little bit of thinking going on, how on earth could it really be about this highly contagious virus that's going to kill you, when the focus is only on one side? As medical doctors have been saying, there's no such thing as a one-sided anything, particularly in medicine. That's why you have all kinds of specialists, and you go and get more than one doctor's opinion. Come on, we all know that that's what you want to do if you get a really horrible diagnosis, right? So why did all these things that we know suddenly become irrelevant? Why did they suddenly become stupid? Don't ask. Really, that's insane. And we know that, but we have to come out of this recognition where we sit back and we say, hey, that's insane, because that is our own mental paralysis, and it's keeping us frozen in saying it's insane, and it's just going to stop. Well, while we are pausing to have our paralysis and our disbelief, those with an agenda who want to make sure we lose our freedoms and we become subjected to, I don't even know what their ungodly plan is. All I know is it's ungodly, because they're attacking our Constitution, they're taking away freedom of speech, and they're hiding and censoring like crazy. And if that doesn't put up a red flag for you, I would gently and kindly suggest you sit back for a moment and say, why am I so afraid? What is my fear paralysis that I don't want to look at censorship as a real problem in this country? Geez, I could be putting out porn and nobody's going to give a rat's ass. But I want to tell you an alternative viewpoint that, and especially from doctors who are dealing with people who have found cures, and they're actually saying, hey, this doesn't turn out to be as bad as we thought. Good news! And instead of everybody celebrating the good news, they're being beat up, slandered, called names, and shoved right out of your ability to listen and judge for yourself. I don't know about you, but that sure put up a red flag for me. And how could it possibly be a true, real issue if you can see a mandate coming out of Washington that says something like this? Hey, everybody wear a mask, and I want your 3-year-old to wear it. Okay? And we're all exempt in government offices. Okay, I don't buy for 1 minute, and I don't think you do if you're even thinking for a tenth of a second. How could government people be immune in a way that they don't have to protect themselves from others and you from them? Clearly, that alone made it very clear there's something else going on here, and what might have started as the virus is no longer about the virus. It's all now about controlling people and trying to get us to be subservient and to give up our powers, to give up our freedom. And for me, what I'm looking at is giving up the quality of life. And as an educator, I'm looking at how evil, and I don't use that word very often, but I think evil is the word that fits. I've been meditating and, praying on it and contemplating. And when people are willing to hold children hostage to their agenda and to deprive them of their quality of life and the joy that is just so natural and the love that is just so natural in the heart of a child, and they're willing to take all that away and hold them hostage to you losing your freedom of speech, your freedom of taking your child to get the education that they need, and trying to make it about everything else under the sun, I think that's evil. I think holding children hostage in that way, there's only one word, and for me it's evil. If you've got better words, let me know. I'd like to hear them. I'll contemplate and think that over too. So much for the intro. Now let's segue into a bit of a recap for those of you who are listening for the first time, and for those of you who, and we deeply, deeply apologize for some audio issues. We are feeling our way into providing this platform for you, and we're doing the best we can, and we beg your forgiveness and your kind, gracious attitudes, because we know you guys got them, and we've already been hearing from your kind hearts, and we thank you for your support. So as a recap, we started talking about what's going on, and oh my God, what can I do? Confusion is another form of pause, where we are paralyzed, because when we're confused, we really, really don't know which way to go, and we feel stuck in making that decision. I've been feeling a lot of that myself lately, and I know that every day I think, okay, everything's coming together, and I wake up and another new crazy thing is happening, and I want to slip back into, that's insane, and I realize I got to stop doing that myself, as well as all of the rest of us, because that's our knee-jerk response to what's insane. But as long as we stay on that, we're paralyzed, right? And we lose our own empowerment to be able to stop what we see as insane. As long as we're freaking out over it, then it just keeps going on and on and on, because while we're pausing and trying to wrap our heads around it, those who know what they're doing and those who are willing to somehow destroy our beautiful life, they're ready to fill that gap. We'll be talking about gaps and how important they are today too. So we're going to start with what we have looked at is that what's all going on right now relates to a paradigm. Every society is built upon established paradigms that basically teach us how to think and govern the world that we'll live in. The paradigm we're currently living under was set up largely not since the day of the Constitution, because that paradigm, people were really free. And if you tried to hurt any of those, anything in those amendments or the Bill of Rights, man, people would be all over you, and they would be stopping you from violating those hard-earned, fought-for rights. As time went on, things keep changing, and we shift to different paradigms to help build the society that we need to be building. But at the foundation of all of our paradigms for 200 years has been the Constitution of the United States, because it is our Bill of Rights, and it is the governing law of our land that basically ensures our freedoms. And that's the reason people want to come from all over the world to live here. That freedom is delicious. That freedom is exciting because it allows a new quality of life and a level of prosperity and creativity that is really the joie de vivre, the joy of life. And it's the joy of learning to be new and to have innovation and the types of things that just make our heartbeat on the human spirit. Now, our paradigms have shifted, and the most recent paradigm that we're currently living under is under its own transition. But it was an industrial paradigm to support a country that was innovating and going to get into shifting its prosperity by making and creating things, and how to make more things in less time, and it became what is called the industrial age. Okay, and the big epochs of thought change are given a name like that. In the industrial age, we've all heard it. We all know what it is. Well, at least when I was in school, we heard about it. Did you get to hear about that, Tristan, when you were in school? Did they talk about the industrial age?
Yeah, we did.
Oh.
For a very short time. Some of the technology that came out of it.
Okay, so he was saying, yes, they were still taught about it, and we're now moving into a technological and information age. And so we're transitioning, but we're still really strongly connected with the industrial age institutions. Okay, and the paradigms are thoughts and ideas that shape and govern the way we think and the services and institutions that we will give authority to and we will pay money to support our way of life. That's what we've been looking at, and you go back to our original shows to see some of the ideas where we actually diagram out some of these institutions and how they all fit together. Current paradigms are policy driven. They are not principle driven. And the idea there is policy drives everybody insane. Okay, because it gets quite thoughtless after a while. I'm sorry, but if you're wearing blue today is a red day. Well, why is it a red day? Well, because it says in the policy book, Mondays are blue days. That's how policy works, okay? And policy is a control mechanism, but it is also a mechanism that tries to get everybody to conform to something. And not necessarily when it was set up, it might have had a purpose. But as time goes on, very often the purpose it was originally set up for becomes totally irrelevant, but the policy often doesn't change. And therefore, you start living out these idiotic ideas that are actually very non-conducive to your joy of life. So, policy-driven is about establishing a common ground as a groupthink. It's one way to really look at it, and it's very effective. And a groupthink is controlled by things like educational indoctrination and mass media. Now, we have to ask, and we've been examining this over the last couple weeks, is our mass media currently free, or is it controlled, bought, and paid for by special interests? Well, it's pretty clear it is. The mass media is controlled, and we already know it's bought by big names. Will, would you like to name a few of the names that are controlling pretty much the mass media?
CNN, Fox Media is
Who owns?
leaning.
Who?
Well, I'm not sure who owns CNN now, but it's going to be more likely a multinational
Corporation.
Yep.
All right, so we can generally look to corporations. We can look to names like Bezos.
Yeah, Bezos doesn't own it.
But he owns one. He owns
Post.
what?
Washington Post.
He
Washington
now
Post.
owns the Washington Post.
Yeah,
Yes.
he's a
And I
couple
saw a
of-
dramatic change. I used to really love the Washington Post, and then he bought it out, and very rapidly I saw it completely change to a paper. I didn't care if I ever saw any article written on it anymore. So, and there's all kinds of things that you can watch. There's a great show that was on PBS about the press, and it was basically showing you the difference between an independent newspaper still wanting to give you the truth and to make sure that all their sources were verified versus big names and big corporations buying them out, for either sensationalism or to promote whatever their agenda was, their bias, to get you thinking down those lines. Nonetheless, what we do know is the mass media is currently controlled. And you know that simply by looking at how they all parrot the same information. We know that by looking at what is not put on there, what they will not report, and how they will rapidly attack an alternate viewpoint. That is not free press. Just think about that. It's not free if you're going to attack an alternative viewpoint. Free says, okay, we agree to disagree. This is what we think, and then this paper says that, and this radio says that. Instead, you find the big mass media attacking anybody who's saying anything that's not their party line. Not only do we see them attacking, we now actually see them being bold enough to violate freedom of speech and the freedom of the press and all that by literally censoring your path to them. And you have to now dig, and do homework. I'm sorry, but you're going to have to do homework if you want to know the truth. It's sad. You should be able to just go and get something and be properly informed. But right now in a hostile world, we're hostile to your having full free awareness. So we looked at that, okay? And you want to think about that because it's important. Because your mass media and education indoctrination will heavily influence your ability to think clearly, because they will already be setting up a narrative for you to think down a certain path. And without an alternative viewpoint where you can say, is that correct? Is that true? Do I really think that? Or do I think differently? Without the alternative viewpoints, it becomes very difficult for you to not be controlled, indoctrinated, and locked into the box of the groupthink being given to you. Will?
A lot of this got kind of entrapped in the sense of having a free press. You used to have reporters.
Yeah, remember the reporters?
Remember the reporters that actually went out? You see these pictures, these old films and stuff, these guys with these flash cameras and stuff. Well, they're out there reporting what was actually going on. Now, a lot of the mass media has been turned over to journalists, and they go into hypothetical, somebody, they got it off the big AP Newswire services, and so they can write their own rendition of it, but they weren't there.
That's interesting, because when I was in high school, one of the electives that I took was to work on the school newspaper, and the rigors we were held to get what would be a story in there was really rigors. It'd be, and what are you basing that on, Sharon? That is not a news article. That is a feature article. They made it very clear. You have featureized that. You don't have it substantiated the way to make that one a news article. And so we had to learn, were we writing news articles? Were we writing feature articles? And then there were editorials that could be written. And so, and you got a lot of clarity if you want to get out of that class with any kind of grade. What the difference of the three types of presentation of news was all about. But I'm not sure a lot of people are getting that training anymore. Nonetheless, you have to know what this is all about. Otherwise, you don't really have a platform within your own presence to be empowered to make your own choices and to do your own thinking. You have moved in what is called groupthink, and that is where you allow yourself to be told what to think. Now, I know some people listening to this say, hey, that's okay, all right. But just know that's what you're doing. I know there are a lot of people listening going, what? I don't like that idea one iota. And you're going to want to know how to get out of groupthink. You can always decide, I like what's in groupthink. I like this idea in groupthink. And I hate that, and that idea. That's what thinking for yourself is all about. You get to choose from a palette of thoughts which ones you like and don't like, and why you like them and why you don't like them. Okay, that's freedom. Now, common ground as groupthink, it was vital where people would say, I'm happy to not think. Now think about that. If you're happy and content to not think, you have given up the greatest power you have as a human being that differentiates you from all the other animals out there. You get to reason and weigh and choose. But if you choose to not do your own thinking, you're just now like an animal and a rat in a cage. You're not thinking. You're just allowing yourself to be spoon-fed information, and you've abdicated your greatest power. I personally don't like giving that power up. And I also know that that power is the very essence of your being an inspirited human being. Who's breathing your breath? That beautiful spirit, that presence that's connected to a higher power, to something beyond the ego mind. And that is an intelligence that thinks. You just want to think about that. So my mom would say, oh, put that in your pipe and smoke it for a while. Which would basically be saying you're going to contemplate the idea and weigh it for yourself, which means think for yourself. Now with children, I like to say, let's put on our thinking cap. And then we start talking about different ideas. Now, the common ground currently has gotten a lot of people to just fall into groupthink. And therefore, that's the common ground, okay? Now, this current common ground has a few basic qualities that are extremely important. And I think you'll recognize each and every one of them without much concern, okay? And recognize that because we're policy-driven in the paradigms and we've built our institutions, they equalize. The institutions have begun to equalize this common ground to certain types of answers. That one is fear-based. And fear-based on our services, our reasoning, and our solutions. Now, you'll never get a long-term, well-thought-out answer when you're making answers from fear. Just think about it. If you're scared, you're driving the car, and somebody jumps out in front, you're going to respond very quickly. And you may say, God, if I would have known he was coming, I would have acted very differently. Somebody points a gun to your head while you're walking to the car. You're in absolute fear. I mean, is your reasoning super clear at that moment? No, the only thing that really happens in that moment is how can I get that gun out of here? And how do I get away from that gun and this guy and whatever harm they want to give to me? In just daily life, that fear is based on also surviving. And in modern times, in our current paradigm, that is about getting a paycheck. And if somebody says to you, if you don't put a mask on, you don't get a paycheck, even if you absolutely hate it, you know it's hurting your health, you don't want to do it, and you put it on, have you been controlled? Are you free? Are you being controlled? And you're being controlled what? To be able to survive. Do you think your constitutional right has been violated and you are not free anymore? Does it make you feel good, or does it kind of make you feel pretty crappy? Okay. This fear also now, with this virus thing, has focused heavily on a fear of death. You know, just get back from the fear just a moment and we think, I'm born, and do we know that from the day we're born, do we know that eventually death happens to every human being on the planet? We all know that. Is that a secret? Is that like a shocking surprise? Oh my God, people die. Oh my God, they didn't used to die. No, we've known everything in life has a beginning, has an end. An animal is born, it dies. A plant grows, it dies. Everything in life has a beginning and an end. This is a cycle. It's a life cycle. And by acting right now like we can somehow get rid of that cycle, does that make sense? No. But if the media talks about it in such a way that that's all they make you think about, it completely overwhelms you, puts you into fear of death paralysis, and at all costs, we have to stop all deaths. You are now very easily manipulated to give up everything because you can't get out of that paralysis. Okay? You want to think about that. You want to know what's happening to you so you can decide if it's okay to keep happening to you or if you want that to stop happening to you. But when you don't know what's happening to you, you can't do anything about it because you're confused. You don't understand how to make it stop or how to improve it or whatever it is that you really in your heart of hearts wants to do about it, right? So this is empowerment to understand that your power has been taken away from you by getting you to go into a form of paralysis where all you can think about is one thing. Okay? Just one more thing I'd like to say about that is I've been seeing a lot of talk where people are wanting to say, but even one death by COVID is too many. What a bizarre argument. One death by heart attack is too many. Do we start removing people's hearts? I hope not. One death by a car accident is too much. Does that mean we now say, everybody park your cars, sell them, get rid of them? The car industry says, I hope you don't go down that path. But we all say, no, I still want to be able to get across town. I'll take that risk. Okay? One death by blood pressure is too much. What do we do about that? Do we stop what we think is the one cause or any cause that could cause high blood pressure? No. Do some people might genetically have high blood pressure? One death by cancer is too much. Have we found a way to totally eradicate all cancer, to stop it? You see what I'm saying? It's an absurd extreme, and we're going to talk about this, so remember this word. It is an extreme response that loses all credibility because it is so myopically focused on something that is insane. Okay? All deaths matter, and all life will eventually die. That's mature. We're meant to grow up and mature as adults. We're not meant to stay in fantasy land and hope that the realities of life will suddenly just disappear. I want to think about that. Okay? The next part of the common ground that our institutionalized our equaling answers to is the lowest common denominator, which is the idea of dumbing things down. You can get anybody to think like a 3-year-old. But you can't get a 3-year-old to think like an 18-year-old. That's the idea of lowest common denominator. You got to take everybody to the lowest functionality, which means you got to eradicate everything that is above and beyond that. And generally, all creativity goes down the drain with that, and all kinds of innovation and everything else, because you got to go down to what the lowest can handle. We call that dumbing down. We see it in education. It's been a complaint, and anybody who's been aware of any kind of thing has heard complaints over and over and over again about the public education dumbing down America, dumbing us down. Okay? And when you get people dumbed down in their thinking, groupthink is part of that. So the groupthink is part of what you get dumbed down to. When you're dumbed down, you can't handle truth. It's what they tell you. I'm sorry, but you can't handle the truth, so I'm not going to tell it to you. Now, there are some people who go, okay, because they're happy to be dumbed down. But I can tell you most adults, that irritates them and makes them angry because they say, don't you make a decision for me. Don't you tell me what I can and can't handle. If I have a problem, if I have broken bones, don't pretend and don't tell me because you don't think I can handle that. I got a broken bone. I want to know it. Okay? If I'm about to lose my home because I'm about to go into debt, don't pretend and tell me it's not happening. Let me know. I might come up with another solution. So, when you're told you can't handle truth or the bigger picture, you're being dumbed down. Just know that. You can start equating that. Am I being dumbed down? Is somebody trying to put me into a tinier box than my intelligence and capacity to think and be is? I call it, instead of using etc., I love to use ad nauseum because it all makes me sick. And it should make you sick. And it probably is. And you're saying, oh, thank you. I like ad nauseum for things that are disgusting and repulsive and shouldn't be. Okay. The other part of this institutionalized equaling all answers down gets us to the fear, the dumbed down, I can't think of my own solutions, I'm not worthy. Religions give us a lot of this lowest common denominator, and they pull us onto the sinner thought, which means I'm not worthy. And right from there, you've given up so much power. I mean, you just think, I'm unworthy. And if that doesn't take away all your joie de vivre and all your empowerment and all your goodness, you tell me what else it does. You tell me its positive aspects, because I'd like to hear about them. Okay? Takes us down to complete capitulation of our empowerment to a save me, save me. Don't make me face my problems. I'm too stupid. I can't handle the big picture. I'm filled with so much fear. Save me. Okay? I've given up my thought to think for myself, to solve my own problems. Religions have done, and so save me from my problems. Save me from my debt. Save me from my sin and worthlessness. Whatever. I just put 3 things on there. I'm sure we could really get a great list going here with a lot of audience putting in your concerns about what you want to be saved from and what you've been dumbed down to think you can't solve for yourself. Okay? And when you have a poor sense of yourself, you are really confused and you really feel your disempowerment. Okay? So religions have given us some answers. I'm just going to look at 3 institutions. Okay? Religions have said, okay, I'm going to save you from sin and worthlessness and the life problems that you got because you're such a big sinner. Well, there's the rapture. It's just going to happen. Just wait for the right day and the right moment. It's going to happen. You're just going to be whisked off. That's one solution I've heard a lot of churches. I've heard a lot of people talk about and try to tell me would be really good for me. I've thought it over and said, I don't think it works that way. I'm pretty sure it doesn't work that way. I know it doesn't work that way. Okay, you do the rapture. I'm going to do something else. I hear a lot of people say, hey, Jesus is going to solve all your problems. And when I ask for an explanation and how he's going to save me, the answer is always, can't answer some just common sense questions. So I've looked at that and said, I don't think it's Jesus. I think it's the God within me. And that's what really will save me, is my accessing that divine intelligence and trusting the divine design that says, hey, I made you a beautiful body. I made this amazing immune system. You know, I got this heart that beats and, oh man. And look at the beautiful world I've created. Look at the trees and the mountains and the moss and the beautiful fruits and vegetables and roses and lilies of the field. Oh my God. There's so much beauty that we can access. Okay? So I'm just saying religions have given us these, and a lot of people have just gone into a groupthink on it, and they don't really think any deeper than, is that possible? And does it rob me of my own empowerment and relationship with the divine to be empowered by the divinity that beats my heart? Then we have banks. Okay? Save me from my debt. Save me from my money problems. Save me from being this COVID thing, taking my job away, and now I don't have a paycheck, but I've got a loan on the house, and how am I going to make it? Blah, 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 blah. Yeah, I'm not saying blah, 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 it doesn't exist. I'm saying, yes, this exists. And so the banks have come in and say, well, we've got an answer for you. How about credit cards? Just charge them up. How about loans? And now we're starting to look at what happens when you've got all this debt and you've got all these loans and you have no emergency fund. But who didn't establish the emergency fund? Was your neighbor supposed to do it? Or were you supposed to do that for yourself? And with the dumbed down education, you probably didn't even get taught to think about that. Now, I know when I went to school, we were taught about all those things. How to set up a savings account, how to set up, don't have just a checking account, but have a savings account, and things like that. Okay? And then the government, and what they've actually done is put you down a rabbit hole, haven't they? Oh, and they have screwed you to the wall, which means your fear and your paralysis goes up. Oh my God, what am I going to do? I get it. And this is not beautiful and it's not pretty. And I'm going to call this human suffering. And then the government will say things, oh, I'll solve you a lot of your problems. We'll give you free schools where we will get you into groupthink and education indoctrination, and we'll dumb you down, but it's free. Do you know how hard it is to compete with free? Yeah, we all know the answer to that one. Okay? And welfare. Oh my God, we'll give you welfare and we'll solve your problems. However, we're going to keep you in a box because if you do anything to try to get out of the welfare, we'll punish you. And we're going to make it really, really hard for you to get out of the welfare. Okay? Just a few things about the paradigms and the institutions and ways in which this looks in common everyday life. So I'm not just talking theory. I'm helping you apply this and see this fits practical life. And I'm not just pulling this up out of my theory cap. I'm actually helping you see and think about reality and see how it relates to a big picture foundationally and how it relates to you personally. Because you need to know these things. You need to know them so you can be empowered. These are myopic answers, quick fixes, and instant gratification. We've become accustomed to that. And what world do we currently see as a result of these paradigms? Well, look at chaos. In less than 100 days, people have capitulated our life and the freedom and the joys and the birthday parties and all the things we were doing to now be living in fear, riots, city destructions, lockdowns, wanting to mask everybody up so we can't see another human being, being just filled with so much fear and paralysis. That's so un-American and that's so unconstitutional, and we're confused. And we do not know what to believe when we stay paralyzed. Will, would you like to? Thank you, Will. All right. So all of that and all of the other shows, 4 or 5 that we've done, have brought you to say, you know what? Our paradigms need to change. Okay? But you have to make that decision. I didn't want to just come up and say we need to change our paradigms. I wanted to give you the reason and the rationales and some baseline so you could make these decisions for yourself, because I'm really only interested in your empowerment. Your empowerment. I don't want you to think necessarily the way I do, but I want you to be able to think and see the bottom lines and have good clarity in your thought, and then trust that you will do smart things. Okay? So, yes, we need change. Yay, we got a big smiley face. Yeah, we know we need change. Let's change. But let's look at change itself. It's going to happen generally one of 2 ways. We can do change by revolution, and that was last week's show. And revolution basically is a big, we go in maybe with guns blazing. As a matter of fact, a little bit, we see the chaos already wanting to incite us into a revolution. Well, revolution is pure chaos. And there's a lot of suffering through destruction. We can burn half of our cities down. And we got a lot of history that shows this has happened. France did it. Other countries have done it. And there was a horrible, horrible time frame in which people had to live devastating, poverty-driven, suffering lives. Now, that's the beauty of history. We see revolution in that way is not really a very good answer. It's a desperation answer. It's an answer in which we just go hysterical. That's another reason we're talking about the paradigms and understanding. We want to look at not being hysterical and in panic, but rather being filled with awareness and seeing options and using our creativity. Man, I believe and trust in the massive intelligence of everyday people having the most amazing creative answers if they only realized they're the ones who have to put them forward. Sit down, have community meetings, talk. You guys are going to come up with some great answers for your community, maybe even just for your block. That's a start. That's empowerment. It's a way in which you could work together and not be vulnerable to the complete chaos and destruction. It gives you answers. And you could say, oh, here's a way to feed my family if I don't have a paycheck. We're all planting gardens together. You know, we'll build a little greenhouse for a 5-block neighborhood, and we'll have fruits and vegetables through the winter. We won't starve. And we'll be solving our own problems. And from there, we may find we're just going entrepreneurial because they're so good at that nowadays. And we got the younger kids coming in and say, hey, let's apply some tech to this and do it. Let's do it even better, etc., etc., etc. I trust our intelligence, creativity, and innovation to solve our own problems. And I'd love to see some of these solutions. And not only that, you will feel really good inside. You'll beam with a certain pride. Look what we've done. We did this. And then you might say you're trying to solve a problem and it's not working right, but then you're going to go and talk to some other people and they're going to say, here's how we solved that problem you're having a problem with. Communication. Oh my God. Grassroots is a word you've often heard, and that's what it's about. Okay? Stop trying to get the government to solve your problem, because you can't trust that, because they got to work from the dumbed down position. They're trying to do everybody all at once. And it's just, think it, just study all this stuff. It'll make sense to you. Okay? So, what happens with a revolution? Well, once you get the chaos, and once you got all the breakdown and destruction, and everything's burnt to the ground, and people are out on the streets, okay, you have a void. And you now really are so disempowered. You're destroyed, you're in poverty, you're desperate, you're probably even sick because you're not eating, you're on the streets, and where's everybody going to go and defecate? There aren't going to be porta potties everywhere. I mean, this is the reality. And if you study, you'll see these are the types of things that really started to kill people, because the diseases that come, that the rats will carry around, and all the stuff, because we're not really using plumbing systems because we broke them. Okay. Is that what you want? Is that the life you really want? Think about it. Then don't make decisions that are going to bring that into your reality. That's a thought. No, it's just my thought. Okay. It's an empowering thought. And I invite you to think in a more empowered way. And not just by using violence, but by using your intelligence that the divine gave you. Okay? So, this void gets filled by, if we're going to look for our Savior, and the current paradigm sets us up to do that, instead of being empowered ourselves, what's the other duality choice? Somebody else, save me! Somebody come and save me! And you'll have all these political despots wanting to power you over and promise you everything you want to fill this void. Okay? They're going to promise you that they're going to end your suffering. They're going to give you stuff, and it's just going to drop in your lap. And thus, they will save you. You know what? That's fantasy. Look at history. It has never, ever, ever worked. Why do we think it's going to work this time? What's that statement by Einstein trying to solve the problem?
Definition of insanity.
The definition of
Doing
insanity.
the same thing over and over again and expecting different results.
Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. If we don't learn from history, isn't that exactly what we're doing? Now, we have jumped in to the insanity that we just believed was going on. No. If you really see what's coming, you can prepare yourself with your intelligence to not go there. But if you don't know what's coming, because you're so wrapped up in the fear, and all you can think about is, I don't want to die, I don't want to die, and you just keep breaking your society down, you're not thinking. I mean, think about your life today and you can't pay the rent, and about 100 days ago when you could pay the rent. Did we shut the economy down? Did we stop buying? Did we have masks? No. Did we have the same virus out there? Yes. Did we have even scarier viruses? Yes. And did we go into this destruction over it? No. Because we didn't have a media drumming it into our head and just feeding our emotional body with so much fear and hysteria. I think that's evil. But I think hurting people like that and abusing them like that and just locking them down and such, to me, I think it's evil. I don't have a better word for it. Again, if you got a better word, I'd love to hear it. Okay? So, this void, history will show us that it gets filled by social tyrannies. Socialism, communism, fascism, they're all basically variations on the same thing.
Isms.
They're isms, which means they're thoughts that are based on a theory of give everybody everything. The big top will be benevolent leaders, and we're going to save you and take care of you. It has never, ever worked out. We have current history where that happened in, Will, were you saying?
Venezuela.
Venezuela. Look what has happened there to that beautiful country.
Look what happened to Russia.
Look what happened in Russia. Okay? We don't need to go down that path. Do your own homework. do your own homework and get beyond the first 2 pages of Google. You're going to have to go and dig deeper. Get out some old books and read real history. And try to get to books that were written more like textbooks and stuff even before the 50s and 60s, where there was a lot less rewriting of history to make it more palatable or whatever the heck they thought they were doing. Okay? So social tyrannies have to work with the old paradigm, even though they're promising you the new paradigm. They're saving you, so that's old paradigm. They are having to take everything to the lowest common denominator. We're going to take from the rich and give to the poor. Oh, the poor say, oh, that's great. And the rich go, is that great? Okay, but the rich, it doesn't work. Then everybody becomes essentially controlled and essentially almost poor. Barely surviving on a government subsistence that the social tyranny has decided this is in your best interest. You know, we really don't trust you to do your own thinking, and we're going to decide for you this is in your best interest, even if you hate it. That's what you're going to get, that because we can't give everybody everything, so we're going to just take it to the lowest common denominator. That is not happy life. It is not a happy life. It is not a free life. And it is not prosperity. It is the opposite of all of that.
So the socialists eventually run out of everybody else's money.
The socialists then, that's a very good point. I love it. In case you can't hear Will, I'm going to repeat it because he's on the other side of the mic. Say that again, Will, so I can repeat it.
The socialists finally run out of spending everybody else's money.
Okay, he said
This is Margaret Thatcher. She was one of the higher-ups in England.
Okay, so Margaret Thatcher, a higher up in England, who's got to see and watch some of this stuff from other countries in which they were negotiating and working with, that the socialists eventually run out of spending everybody else's money. And think about it. Our government is already trillions in debt. So if you're already in a debt hole, why are you turning to that as your savior? Something's got to fall out of the empty hole. Let's grow up and let's just look at this and say, yeah, this looks like a disaster coming down the pike in which you are going to be the sufferer, the greatest sufferer. And I mean us personally. Is that what you want? People who have recently had children, parents, is this the future you gave birth to your child for? Is this what you thought when you looked at that baby in your arms and said, this socialistic world in which we're all going to be brought down to the lowest common denominator, and we're going to steal from people, and then eventually the government's not going to be able to provide anymore, and then we're going to want to revolt against this horrible life? Honey, this is the life I'm going to give you, and you're going to be the one who's going to have to fix it. I don't think any parent out there that was your goal. Maybe I'm wrong, but I'd like to think that's not what you were thinking. Tell me if I'm wrong. Okay? So, we have a historic pattern. A change that is not a change. Talking about what Einstein was saying insanity was. Okay? Just a transition from bad to worse. Okay? Now, here's what the historic pattern has shown. Because we live in a duality world, and we have not ultimately changed our paradigms to reflect something bigger than duality, what we do is we swing like pendulums from one extreme to the other, one extreme to the other. Take any pendulum. If I pull it over here to the left, what's it going to do when I let it go? Boom! It's going to go to the other side. Then what's it going to do? Boom! Back to the other side. Then what's it going to do? Back to the other side. And if you'll watch this thing swing long enough, it'll slow it down to just slightly moving at the center point. This is what we would call balance. And this is where principle and the divine functions by resolving duality extremes. And extremes mean you got one side super great, other side super ugly. Okay? That's extremes. Okay? Opposites. We don't want to live in opposites. We want to live in the center point where we're dealing with a little bit of freedom and a little bit of restriction. A little bit of freedom, a little bit of restriction. What does a little bit of restriction look like? If you're a criminal, you're going to jail. We're not going to let you run free. That's one of our restrictions. You can be free as long as you're not hurting other people. Okay? That would be one restriction. Okay? So we're looking for balance, but we're talking real close to the center point. That would mean for the first time in thousands of years, humanity will have been intelligent enough to not follow the historic pattern of looking for a savior who will take us to the lowest common denominator, and basically we'll run from one extreme to the other. Okay? Instead, we're going to look at empowerment, and we're going to want to work at the center point. Our question last week was it by revolution or evolution? And we talked about evolution being the third answer. There's a third answer that equilibrates the extremes and brings them to their center point. Don't you think we're smart enough, have enough technology, and it's time to use this one? Everybody can read just about nowadays. Well, I know we still need reading programs, but the majority of people can read nowadays. And we can now recognize that what I'm saying is true. I'm not bullshitting you. You might not like it. I don't like what I'm telling you, but sometimes the truth isn't pretty. But the truth will set us free because it tells us what really is going on, and therefore we can come up with real solutions. When you don't know what's going on, or when you're being fed a bunch of lies, you're disempowered to the max. Okay? Everything is drained out of your ability to be empowered. So the third answer is evolution. And evolution means we're going to seek to solve this without violent revolution, without a socialism answer, because a socialism answer looks like it's going to be a good idea, but it is a passive violence that becomes the most active violence you've ever seen in your life. And I can just look at the history. Just look at the history. I don't think you're going to say, yeah, that's exciting, and that's what I want. And particularly if you have children, I don't really think you're going to say, that's the birth I want. That's what I want to give my children. I think you'd be embarrassed and ashamed that that's what you'd be handing down to them. It's not a legacy to revel in with joy. It's something to weep and cry over. And we can stop it, but we have to do it to come out of our paralysis. Therefore, we've been talking about paralysis. We have to come out of paralysis. And truth is the balm for coming out of paralysis, because now we can see what we need to do. We can see our options, and we can have that beautiful stabilizing thing called clarity. Okay? Clarity makes us feel stable. And it literally, clarity can take the fear down. Clarity and answers takes the fear down. Do you know what the opposite of clarity of love of clarity is? Confusion. Do you know what the opposite of love of fear is? It's love. It's not hate. It's love. And the opposite of love is not hate. That is an extreme form of resentment, and resentment means you took my value and worth, and I'm angry at you. Okay. The extreme, the complete opposite, the duality of love is fear. So do we want to build our new balance point on love, which is eternal and completely at one with the Creator and resonating with the Creator, who has nothing but the best and good and prosperity? The Creator is not into suffering. I don't care what any religion tells you. God, the divine, Krishna, whatever you want to call God, I don't care what your words are. You know that higher power. And I will tell you from my after-death experience, that power has absolutely no interest whatsoever in pain, suffering, sorrow, fear. It's pure love energy that says you are all equally capable. Absolute equality is divine love. And absolute equality means nobody better than, nobody's less than. Everybody is equal but different. We're different but equal. And our difference is the beauty of life. If everything were just black and white, well, watch a movie in black and white. Do you like it as much as one in Technicolor? Technicolor basically means we have all the colors. And the more that we have the beautiful, vibrant colors, the more beautiful we find it. If I look out in nature, I see all kinds of colors. I see green in so many different shades. I'm awed that green can have that many different looks. The Creator shows us the beauty of diversity. We're equal, and we're equally different. But our differences are what we celebrate. Okay? Oh, I got off on a little bit of love tangent there because it's felt like we needed a little love. a little bit of that to rest in and say, yes, that is a worthy place for us to go. Okay, so if we look at doing this by evolution, which is the way I really would hope that you could see in the vision of what we're talking about here. If we change by evolution, what we do is we keep what worked in the old. What's the most powerful thing that was working in our old paradigm? It's simple. It was the Constitution of the United States. That document for 200 years really gave a lot of substance to where we were going. Now, we put a lot of things in it, and we got into different forms of capitalism and all this other stuff. We might not want to go down that path this time, but let's keep the Constitution because it guarantees our inalienable rights granted by the Creator and builds our foundation from that. We need a firm foundation that gives us absolute equality. And absolute equality would mean absolute equality. That means, and even our Constitution and some of our things with voting and suffrage, we went through some things, we grew. Let's keep what we learned through the 200 years. Equality, absolute equality, emphasized more. Freedom of choice. And include this time freedom of medical choice, which was talked about but didn't actually get included in the Bill of Rights for a variety of reasons, mainly due to slow communications and they had to get it on a horse over to another city where people could vote on it, and that took time. It wasn't like it could just be shipped there overnight delivery. Okay, which has given them more time to hammer out the words, because words they realized were very important. Okay, so we want to build from a foundation. That will give us support. We won't be in sheer chaos. We won't be looking for a savior because we already know what we don't like and what did not work on some of the bottom line parts we just looked at. We don't want a common denominator where it's the lowest common denominator. We want equal, absolute equality. Now that's going to be very diverse. I think we can rise to the challenge of working with that creativity. So we don't want chaos. We want to transition by transformation. Not revolution, but transformation. We want to change the form. We want our basic structure that is pure and supports the equality and absolute equality with people as the foundation that we would build our new balance on. We're going to break the historic pattern, but that doesn't mean socialism. But we do need our freedoms intact to transition and transform so that this is evolution, the third answer that we follow. And we'll do it more gradually and slowly, but with very concerted focus, laser beam focus on making the changes. Okay. Thank you, Will. Oops. Okay, here we are now. Let's talk about now. That was a recap and a little bit of an expansion upon what we've been talking about to help coalesce and get us all pulling things together. Okay. So we want to, now has dots all over the place. That's what these are. These are dots. They're just ideas, concepts, things that are going on, the press going out, who owns it, who owns that newspaper, what's censorship about, what about education, alternatives in education, what about people who can't pay their rent, you name it. Okay, we got all this information over here, and they're not connected very well. This is what we would call separation consciousness, okay? And look at all the holes and all the gaps. Gaps are holes. They're missing vital information. And what happens is when we have gaps, we have separation, you've got rabbit holes in which all kinds of stuff can just fall down and nothing gets connected and everybody can spin their own story, their own narrative. So what we got going on right now in this separation consciousness is we have a group of people who are very organized, and they put together the idea that we're going to enslave the world. And we're going to tell them this most horrible virus is going to kill them. And we're going to fill them with so much fear, they will isolate and do the most horrible thing a human being can do to another human being, and that is to isolate. And then you get to be in your own little sphere, in your own little dot, and all by yourself. You can ruminate, and if all you're listening to is the fear narrative, you'll get so scared, your paralysis will be so intense, you'll just keep contracting, 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 contracting. And here's what we got. No. Open that up with some truth, and let's turn it in instead to the hand that reaches out and says, let's work with each other. Let's not be afraid of each other, because there's nothing to be afraid of. We already know how to protect ourselves. If you happen to be one of the vulnerable to this particular virus, we have cures. Frontline doctors have been talking about. We have answers. Oh my God, we have answers. Okay, we have the answers we needed that we didn't have several months ago. But as long as there's separation and gaps, you may not know about it. You may be so locked down in your isolation and in your fear that it's not coming into you, so you don't know. You are in a huge blind spot. All these gaps are blind spots. That's not useful. That is not useful. Our unity of oneness right now is pure separation consciousness, filled with more gaps and holes and vital missing information that we're scared out of our minds. We absolutely are. Okay? Now, what we're talking about here is let's close those gaps as part of our plan to move into a new paradigm that is cohesive and coherent, that works on the balance and the center point. Okay? And a balance point does what? If you notice when I was doing from one extreme to the other, here to here, what did you see between each of those swings? A huge gap. A huge gap between the extremes. Okay? When we come to the balance at the center point, we pull these dots together, we connect them. And then we have cohesion, coherency. And we would like to call that a unification. Okay? A unifying. So right now the United States of America was unified by what? The one foundational thing that kept us together was the Constitution of the United States and our Bill of Rights. Our freedom. Protection of freedom and privacy. Okay? Right now, that's all being blown up. And the states are not even really caring about the ramifications, the consequences of what they're doing in their own state. I mean, some states have turned themselves into a joke. The idea of the movie, Escape from New York. I mean, Escape from California. Truly Escape from New York, too.
Escape from Michigan.
Escape from Michigan. Oh, my home state. That makes my heart so sad. Okay? But what? The breakdown is becoming so great, and they are allowing the destruction of their own cities and the chaos. They're not even caring about coming together as the union anymore. This is being blown up to a horrible, horrible situation. We have to stop people from doing the destructive things that are taking us into chaos and hating each other. Okay, pitting one race against another race, there's absolutely no value in that, because we're equally, absolutely equally related and one. Okay, we got to go back to the center point where everything makes sense and is sane and is loving, and we start caring about each other again. If I'm close to you, I can care about you. We talk to some of our neighbors. We all care about each other. The neighbors we don't talk to, we don't even know each other. What's the level of care we have for each other? Because we don't know each other, not very good. But the ones that we talk to, sit around, have a beer, maybe have pizza once in a while, sit out on the porch in the summer. We share our tools with each other so that we don't all have to buy them all. Yeah, it's very cool. Very nice. We're caring about each other and helping each other out, and we're improving each other's life by having communication and closing these gaps. Okay, and communication and visiting with each other closes the gaps. Now, I'm not saying we're all, one like the other. We're all very different. We're very, very different. But we enjoy our friendship and we enjoy being neighbors. And we think that is really, it gives us a sense of safety and it gives us a sense of caring and love, and we're not alone. We'd know if we made a phone call and said, could you come over here and help me? We'd be at the front door. Okay? Do you like that idea? If you don't, why not? I'll tell you, we're living with it, and it's very, very nice. And we all feel more peaceful as a result of being able to be that way. And we've made each other's lives easier. Love? Okay. So we close gaps. That means we build bridges. Now we build them with friendship, but we also build them with accurate information. If it's false information, it doesn't build a gap. It doesn't close a gap. It creates a bigger gap. Only that which resonates with the Creator, which is accurate and true, closes gaps. That's a dynamic very few people have really thought about or understand. But you think about it. It is the only thing that makes sense. And I want you to think at a higher level of thinking so that you can empower yourself with that, open up that brilliant, beautiful intelligence that is yours. Because I know it's brilliant. And our intelligence casts a light. Because we think things for ourselves. We think things over. Light reveals information and things you need to know. I was in a store just a couple weeks ago, and I couldn't see the sign, and I kept leaning over to it, and there was this guy and with his back a little bit to me, and then he starts, oh, excuse me, and he starts to move over, and it turns towards me, and I turn towards him. I said, oh, you don't have to excuse yourself. I just couldn't see, and I got to get too close because I don't have my glasses on. So he reads me the sign, and we start talking, and he was this beautiful man, and big and burly, and we just had the most fun conversation about our intelligence. And you know what was interesting? We never once thought about the color of our skins, and it wasn't the same. And I refuse to tell you what color skins we had. You already know mine, but it could have been anything, for all you know. What was beautiful was it was irrelevant. And he said something that I thought was something that stuck with me, and he blessed me with it. And it was, I'm kind of wondering, and all my friends are kind of wondering, why are people not wanting to think for themselves? He says, we're not closing our business down. But he said, why are people not thinking for themselves and saying, I'm not closing my business down. I'm not going into debt because of something you said I have to do because I might hurt somebody else. If somebody's afraid or they're sick, tell them to stay home. They want to wear a mask coming in, and okay, we'll keep distance from them because, okay, they think they're sick, okay? But other than that, we want life back. We want quality. And he knew nobody who got sick. We've known nobody who's gotten sick or died. Everybody I talked to, I've only met one or two people. I mean, I've talked to a lot of people. That does not define a pandemic in my book. When the hospitals are empty, that doesn't define a pandemic in my book. I had a medical emergency the other day, and I got scared, and I thought, oh my God, maybe I should find out what's going on. And HIPAA means I don't have to tell you what that was. Okay, but here's the point. I had concerns, and I didn't want to go to the hospital to find out and get help I probably, maybe really might have needed. And I should have never had to think I'm afraid to go to that hospital. But I called 3 people. I called several people, and 3 of them all told me about a recent experience going to the hospital. It was a horror story. All of them were telling me they were treated poorly. Nobody else was allowed to be with them. They were in pain, and the only thing these medical facilities cared about was pull out your charge card and let's charge it. Now we'll talk to you a little bit more. Prior to that, we're not letting you out of here. We're holding you hostage. It was scary, man. It was frightening. And they said nobody was there to help them. They were in so much pain. And all they want to do is say, I wish I hadn't walked in here. And I can't even make the phone call to say, come in and get me. Okay? Doesn't that frighten you? That frightened me. One of our friends even said he was just conscious enough they were about to give him some medication, and he's just like really afraid for himself, and he's looking and goes, wait a minute, I'm allergic to that drug. And they said, do you want it or not? He said, I said, no, I'm allergic to it. And they said, we don't have time to deal with you. Wow, that's frightening. They could have killed him had he not been just awake enough to really say, let me see that. They were angry. He even wanted to see what his own treatment was going to be, and he saved his own life. But he should have been able to have his wife in there, don't you think? So she could read it while he was half grogging in and out from surgery? Of course. I know somebody else who had a surgery and they wouldn't even put her in the ICU for appropriate care. And they sent her home in so much pain, she's been vomiting for days. That's inhumane. That's inhumane in my book. So, yeah. Should this be what's going on right now? Did you even know that's what was going on right now? I didn't. I now know. Whoa, it's scary stuff if you ask me. So, light is what we're talking about here. Light is communication. It is information. It is people talking to each other and seeing what is really going on, accurate information. Okay? What we want to do is reconstruct the holism by closing the gaps, okay, and seeing what we don't want and what we do want, what fits bringing us back into that center point, okay? So, connecting the dots so we can build the whole picture. And what you need to assemble a whole picture, much like a jigsaw puzzle. Think of it that way. Some people might like a jigsaw puzzle. I like that one a lot. I just couldn't draw it very well. To assemble a puzzle and to connect dots, you need two basic things. You need the big picture to come together, especially the jigsaw puzzle is very easy. If you can't see the picture of what you're building, that jigsaw puzzle we all know will be so much harder to put together and can reconstruct, okay, to finish it, okay? And you need all the pieces. Have you ever gone through trying to build a big jigsaw puzzle with several pieces missing? Oh, if you have, it's very irritating. Okay, and I didn't put it on there. We got that wonderful Holy Trinity coming up. You need the right pieces. Have you ever tried to build a jigsaw puzzle with some wrong pieces in it and you keep trying to build around those wrong pieces? Equally frustrating. Okay. So, I also want to add that. So the third thing would have been correct pieces. So I don't forget later. Yeah. My handwriting, especially in thin air, is even harder. So, currently, the whole picture is what we're trying to get you to see from a bird's eye view. Okay? Connecting dots. Think of it as putting together a jigsaw puzzle. Either way, you're going to be doing a very intelligent thing. You're going to be looking for the big picture and the cohesion. You're going to look for what doesn't fit, what doesn't quite make sense, what isn't adding up. It must add up, or you're not getting a true holism. You're getting a narrative of some kind interjected with false information. Okay? And if it doesn't add up, what are you going to have? Gaps. Gaps, when you close them, add up. So the other thing in closing gaps is it adds up. If it doesn't add up, you've got a gap. And gaps should concern you, okay? Because they are gaps. For no other reason, they're gaps, okay? And gaps are holes and missing vital information. I mean, how much more do you need to qualify why you don't want gaps? Okay? So the whole picture, when we start putting it together, and we have a little bit that we could just look at a little bit about what's currently going on. We can give you links so that you can do your own research, because you do have to do your own homework. If you're going to be empowered, you have to do your own homework. If you're going to be empowered, you can get together with a group of people and assign out who's going to do what, and you all come together. But you're all doing your homework, whether you do it as a group project or as a one-person project. You still are working together to flesh out the whole picture and closing the gaps and seeing where the gaps are and seeing what doesn't add up. If you don't do it, you don't empower yourself. What more can I say? It's really quite simple. So the current whole picture reveals our oneness. Now, when we like to think about we're a unity of oneness, the general idea is always wonderful. We live in harmony. We sing together. Everything prosperity. We kind of go to Edenic, Eden type ideas, utopian ideas. Okay? But currently, we have to have the truth because our oneness is not utopian. And a promise of trying to give us things that are filled with all the gaps and problems we just talked about that go back to an old pattern that we know doesn't work. Well, what happens is if we don't look at the truth of the oneness the way it is, we cannot create the oneness through evolution. Okay? We will be facing revolution and acceptance of socialism, which will eventually lead to very violent revolution, because that's history too. That's the way it. People ended up saying, you lied to us. You promised us things and you lied. Okay? And then they get angry and then they're already in poverty. So it's sad. It's a horrible history, and I see no reason, and I hope you see no reason to repeat that kind of history for you and your children. Okay? Our current oneness, when we look at it accurately, it's not pretty. It's sad. It really is wounded, and it's bleeding. We know it's bleeding because we see all this suffering. We see violence. We see fear. We can't get the help we need. What I was just sharing with you about going to the hospital. Oh my God. If going to the hospital to get medical care is frightening because you're going to be treated like garbage and you're going to be at a medical tyranny's hand and say they're going to do stuff to you with no oversight. What? There's no reason that you can't have a loved one with you or several loved ones with you holding your hand and advocating for you. You're sick. You're in pain. You're suffering. You need somebody who loves you and who cares about you to advocate for you. We've had that our whole life. Why should you give that up now? Because of what? Maybe, what? What? It doesn't even make sense. I mean, somebody else called me from watching the show and said, you know something, Sharon? You know what? I know somebody who was dying of cancer and something went wrong with the chemotherapy and he needed some kind of an adjustment. They came, pronounced him with COVID, which he didn't have. They rushed him off to the hospital. They wouldn't let her or anybody go visit him, and he died within 2 weeks. But once he was dead, she was allowed to go into the hospital room, even though there was another patient in the room. What? That's what I say doesn't add up. It doesn't add up. That was a cruelty that the staff was willing to have put on this poor guy, and he had to die alone. I don't know about you, but I think that's probably one of the saddest things we could talk about death. Not one death by COVID is too much. No. Any death alone without a loved one is way too much. And that is evil and cruel, inhumane. There's no reason for it either. None. None. Okay? Children are being held hostage to a crappy education system and teachers making demands that if we can't get all these other things, we're not going to teach. All right, time to resign, teachers. You've got your head up your fear and you do not have children as your priority. Parents, we can help you to look at some other answers. We need to come up with some other ways to deal with all this. And being an educator, I can help you with that. Just put out a book called The Heart and Soul of Parenting Handbook. And it's step-by-step skills to empower both parent and child. It's about empowerment. And it's about how to do this without having to spank and beat your child up. In the last 2 weeks on Facebook alone, I've never seen memes about beating children and spanking them to bring them into obedience, into being a child you can live with who's not going to drive you insane. I hadn't seen that for years. Get the Heart and Soul of Parenting Handbook and get answers that do not require you to spank and beat your child. And I am going to everybody who gets those books. You can prove to me you bought the book. offer free webinars where we can talk about what you're trying to figure out in reading it and get the reassurances and stuff that you need. I'm here to help you. And your children, aren't they the most important, most precious part of this equation? If you can't do it for yourself, if you're too afraid to do stuff for yourself, don't you want to do it at least for your child? I know I would want to give them a future, and I'm willing to help you give your children a better future because I believe there's no greater force on this planet for positive change than parents. And I think you guys are the power of the universe, but you need some direction, and I'll help you. Okay? So, we need caring, relating. Not money is our foundation. Our true value needs to be quality of life, equality of being, and true, genuine caring, where we do not want to be inhumane to another human being. We want to end human suffering. What's wrong with that goal? Why isn't that going to get your juices going? I can help you. We can all talk about it and figure out how to do this. Do I have all the answers? No. You got some of them. You're going to bring them to the table. I trust your creativity. I know the answers are out there, and I know you got them. And I know we're not going to find them in the current institutions because they're corporate-based, and they're all about dumbing down, and they're all about money and profits over offering you the services you need. Hospitals are proving that right now. They have proven they are a medical tyranny. They are a medical debacle. They're evil right now, in my opinion. You should not have to have those horrible things happen to you. Period. They've lost their way. Really lost their way. And when we look at some of the things that are on the comparison chart for you to look at, you can decide for yourself how big their loss is. So you want to empower yourself with homework because guess what? In the new paradigm, you are going to save yourself because you can. Because you have the power. You are worthy. You are brilliant. You just got to open up the doors and see what that beautiful light and love is inside of you. Now, Will has drawn this wonderful chart, and you will see his handwriting is so much better than mine. Oh, excuse me. I'm going to put this up over here. Now, I would like Will to review some of this, but I'm going to go just show you something very quickly on it. And I know you probably can't read that. I can tell you can't read it from there. But what's interesting is what we want you to see is this is your homework. This is about stuff that is actually going on. Validate it or not, but you're going to have to get beyond mass media. If you stick with mass media, Facebook, and social medias, you're screwing yourself. Go ahead. You can use that, but you will never see outside of the blind spot because they're censoring this kind of awareness. This show, what we're talking about, is for people who say, I want to know if there's more. I want to get beyond being programmed and sold a narrative that may not be telling me everything I need to know. I believe in, I want my empowerment. Even if I'm afraid if I got it or not, I want to at least explore if I like that idea better. I like how it sounds. So I want to pursue it. These are things that are currently in all those gaps we were just talking about. Okay. You need to look at this if you want to look at closing those gaps. Okay. Because truth closes all gaps. The truth will set you free. But I want to warn you right now, the truth isn't particularly beautiful. But it is empowering because it is true. And it is empowering because once you see the big picture, you know where to lay the axe. And different groups of you out there will want to lay the axe in different areas. Point is, we start creating the transformation. We start creating the evolution. And we take ourselves out of that disempowered place of being paralyzed and waiting for something to just change. Because the change that's coming is more socialistic, which is basically a tyranny. And is basically an abdication of your freedom and our prosperity. Okay? We already see it because they're already doing it in many ways. It's already happening. It's really repulsive. Okay? So, there's no light on this stuff. It's in the dark. It's in those gaps. We want to shed some light on it and take it out of the blind spots, out of the gaps, and into your awareness. And I will trust that Will be providing eventually throughout the week some links because he's been the spearhead behind most of this research. Okay, Will, take it away. And you might not want to cover everything, Will.
Right.
It'd be tense, but give them a nice thumbnail.
It's good to have everybody here again today. What we want to do here is kind of go into some major categories of things that are going to fill in the gaps that Sharon's talking about. As you see at the top here, the WHO CDC globalist depopulation agenda. Well, a lot of people have no clue as to what that is. So we think that's at the top of everything, is that they're wanting to depopulate either through just getting rid of people, wars, vaccines, whatever that don't even work. Okay, so it trickles down. So what we're trying to do here is get to where we can cut off the head of the snake. That's the head of the snake, is these international organizations that run parallel to nations, governments, nations, constitutions. And so people are kind of in the blind about it. I think through the internet here the last 25 years, things are becoming a little bit more out in the open. But they also are not putting together these different gap areas, which we have here: truth and facts, medical tyranny, which leads to greed, obviously, because the hospital administrations have become incentivized. It's incentivized collusion, which is basically they get $13,000 a patient for one COVID patient. They get $39,000 for that same patient if they put them on a ventilator. So everybody really doesn't know that. So why would they want to say that somebody died of something else when they're not going to really get this money? And in the meantime, they're cutting off other people who need medical help, who've been getting medical help prior to this situation. Okay, heart attacks, strokes, cancer, flu, influenza, all that's all been prior to this. They could get some of the best help on the planet medically immediately, and now they can't. They can't even get into the hospital. They're holding them basically hostage from getting any medical attention, and most of the hospitals are empty. So that comes with the medical tyranny aspect of things, and we've got controlled media and the lies that they're putting out there, and no facts. It's all lies, and they're just trying to distract from any kind of truth as to what's really going on.
I would just like to add that when Will's saying the hospitals are empty, you hear that, but the people that we had called when I was wondering if I should go to the hospital, which I decided not to, by the way, after what I heard, said that they were the only ones in there, that it was like a ghost town. And I thought, really? When do you walk into an emergency room in this day and age and nobody's there? So a lot of people are afraid to go and get the help they need, even on an emergency basis.
Okay, so this comes under the medical tyranny and kind of goes along with the control lies that the media is putting out so that you don't get any truth or facts. Okay, so you can kind of weave yourself back and forth here. Hopefully, when you watch this, you can look at how you can relate all these categorical areas here. In the truth and facts area here, recently, last 2 weeks, we had the frontline doctors get out in front of the world and just say, hey, we've basically found a cure that will help probably 80 to 90% of the people here with the hydroxychloroquine and zinc.
And tell them what you mean by frontline.
Well, the frontline doctors are doctors that have been on the front line. They are definitely part of the hands-on medical applications here. They're out there doing it.
They're in the clinics. They're in the hospitals. They're getting the people coming in with it and treating them in clinics. I mean, real people stuff,
So
not lab rats.
I think Farsi, I think he said that we need to watch what these people are saying. He kind of was undermining them with some of his statements, so it kind of blew some of the truth of the situation out of the water. But I don't think he's that influential anymore. I think they need to fire him.
But why would somebody who really is interested in your cure to relieve your suffering want to say that doctors who are actually coming forward saying this is our clinical experience, our successes, and we are now feeling better because we're not watching people die anymore. This is lifting our hearts so much that we're taking time away from our clinic to tell you what you're not hearing. We want you to know the answers are here and they're inexpensive and they work.
Okay, so the answer to that is that he's got investments in the pharmaceutical industry along with Bill Gates and Gavi and Moderna, who are now out there playing around with vaccines, experimenting on people. So if there was a effective cure that would say we'll just say 80 to 90% effective for people, he wouldn't want that on the market because for one thing, it's cheap. And it's already in existence, and it isn't an experiment anymore. They've proven it. One of the doctors had cured up to 350 people. Of course, they kind of poo-pooed her. The deal is that that's the bottom line. The dollar is the bottom line. So if they've got an effective cure that's cheap, well, they don't want anybody to hear about that. And they're going to just, create this misleading information about anybody that would say this because it cuts into their agenda. We're going to go back to the globalist depopulation agenda. These vaccines are not going to be good for you. That's just about it. They've even admitted it. They don't even know if they're going to work. So whatever you do, be careful what you're doing because don't do it out of fear. If you're going to try anything, if you have become involved with the virus and everything, then try the hydroxychloroquine on the advice of your doctor if possible, and the zinc. We've been taking zinc, D3 and stuff for decades. Okay, it's a vital nutrient that everybody needs to have in their system. If they don't, their immune system can become compromised. So some of the people here that can help you in the truth or facts arena are especially ZachBushMD.com. Please get some common sense about this on a very base level. We're not going to go into that too far, but he's going to explain to you viruses, bacteria, and fungus and how they're the foundation of our existence here. They're here. Okay? Our immune systems are the divine defense system that God has given us to be able to ward off any of the viruses, okay, even this, because I think the figure is 99.5% of the people recover. Now we're talking about a worldwide statistic, okay, 99.5. So you don't have that much to fear unless you've got these pre-existing conditions, diabetes, a couple of others, high blood pressure, and a compromised immune system, which you need to find out about from your alternative or medical facilitator. So another person is Dr. Rashid Buttar, who's been out there for the last 4 or 5 months just spouting the truth, just like Zach Bush, coming at it directly. They're just assaulting them. They cut them off a few of these channels. So when they start doing that, this group, who is part of the structure of depopulation, wanting to take over it's more like the UN, but it's even greater than that. Your international corporations that have been set free through treaties are a big part of it. They owe no allegiance to anybody. Okay, it's part of the structure. Once you see the structure and get to kind of a pinnacle comprehensive understanding of the structure, and this is where Sharon was talking about, do your homework. Okay, you do your homework in this area too, so that you can comprehensively understand why these arenas relate to each other and what they really mean, and then where's all this coming from. Okay, so part of this also is we've been really heavily into London Real TV with Brian Rose. He has some of the best truth sayers about most issues, financial, economic, what people see coming, this COVID thing, any other way. He's an entrepreneurial type of individual, but he turned it over to the truth. And that's why it's called London Real, okay? Truth TV. So I would encourage you to go to London Real, and all of his videos are free. So you can see whatever you want to see. You just join it, become a supporter, not necessarily financial, just become a supporter. Okay, very good source. Okay, then I and Sharon and a bunch of our people go to Tucker Carlson. You may or may not like Tucker Carlson, but man, the guy hits everybody right in the forehead with the truth. He's out there, he's trying to save the country from this, there's the peaceful demonstrations. Really? They're peaceful? They're burning down cities? I mean, what kind of rational mind would think that's okay? Get centered. Come back to that center point within yourself where you can balance out these alternative perspectives and go, wow, that doesn't work. That doesn't work for me. So who's going to run the country in the most centered, balanced way that has common sense and makes rational economic, administrative, judicial, and legislative decisions? You've got to have that type of individuals, at least in Congress. Okay, so I don't know, Sharon, we didn't want to go through everything here, but part of this center area here with the medical tyranny and the incentivized collusion and greed because they can make so much money and keep the hospital shut down. I already mentioned no other conditions are accepted. The fear of death is the only thing that they're basing all this on. It's fake tests, death certificates. If they died from a motorcycle accident, they can't make that money if they don't say it's a COVID death. Okay, this is just something you've got to do your homework for. I'm just revealing what I've done. Okay, so there's no cure except a vaccine. This is the pharma lobby-controlled Congress. They control Congress with their lobbying money. Okay, so they want to keep this only the vaccine is going to be effective thing. We've got the frontline doctors who, by the way, their websites were shut down. They took them off of YouTube. They shut down their website. So the controlled media over here is a cover-up. They're trying to help the international corporations and the pharmaceutical industry who's been here for 100 years or more, and they have all this money they can just pay Congress off with. So everybody goes, well, yes, they do. And that's why a lot of these bills don't make any sense. So they want to keep the emergency going. No cure. It's a trickle-down control. It's causing suicides, medical issues. They're just left out there. They need surgery. They got cancer. The mask and the social distancing are separation control techniques. The separation, 6-foot separation BS, that was all started by the CIA like 50 or 60 years ago. We're not going to go into that too deeply, but do your homework. Find out if I'm telling you the accuracy of the information. Okay, so you're not going to end the virus at all costs and not have any deaths. Okay, really? It doesn't have to mean deaths. Obviously, people die every moment almost. So they're all it's a control agenda. They're trying to control your mind. They're actually controlling your mind. Okay, you've got to rise above it through your intuitive, spiritual, emotional, mental connections so that you are not left in the lurch of thinking that what this mainstream control media news is telling you is the only relevant stuff. It's ridiculous. So you got to get above it all. You got to spend some time to stay on the agenda. Wake up. This is not their little relative stuff, everyday stuff like Sharon was talking about. Of course, she wakes up every day and it's another crazy narrative that they're spinning out there. They're great at it. They're insane. They have no balance. They're way, way, way left. They don't care what it does to you, really. I mean, they can say all these nice things. They don't care. They wouldn't do it. So the mask thing, the social distancing, separation, control techniques, and like Sharon was talking about, the fear of medical institutions because they lie about COVID deaths. We're going in, the friends that we had have gone into it, and just, they were just put in there by themselves. The only way they got out was sign a credit card. Didn't really give them anything. So watch what you're doing when you go to medical. Try to find you some alternative people. A lot of those people are very brilliant people. Okay, so Sharon, how far do you want to take this? She's still in the room. She's still in the room. That's okay. Never mind, we'll just keep on going. Okay, so obviously through the medical tyranny, this middle area, the government overreach is they're creating a police state through these contact tracers. This creates a citizen turning in their neighbors. Think about it. What are they going to do now? What, they're going to start paying people to turn people in? We've already heard that there's a fed COVID thing coming to our state. So it's probably coming to a state near you to see how we're doing. Okay, this is another level of government that we don't need. Okay, we can handle it ourselves. We've been handling it ourselves. Okay, so that's something to really look for because you're having people come into your life that you have no idea who they are, asking you these personal questions. Do you know anybody who's had it, blah, blah, blah. And if they do, they'll say, well, good, you get to stay home for 14 days or whatever their neurotic thinking is. So you can't have any witnesses in the hospital with your family. You can't go in there with anybody you know. They won't let that happen anymore. They can't even be in your ICU. Okay, it's like Sharon was talking about the friends that we know, and the only time they could go in to get anything or do anything was when that person had died to pick up their belongings. That's insane. So you got you got isolation. That's causes spiritual, mental, emotional breakdowns. We've seen this. There's been a lot of suicides for no reason other than they don't know what to do.
Fully desperate people, Will.
Yep.
They see no quality of life. They don't see a way out. And they already know that the promises of we'll take care of all your debt and we'll just do all these things, they have enough awareness to know that's not the answer either. So they see no answer.
Okay, so we're going to probably wrap up here, but what I want to do here is say we've got to expose the censorship.
Oh, God, yes.
And we've got to expose this incentivized collusion where the hospital administrations are getting all this money and saying every death is a COVID death because they make money. Okay, a lot of these they're closed, they're not even open to anybody, but they're making this big bucks here. Whether you've died of whatever, it doesn't matter. Okay, so the businesses that are retail, they're not a police group, okay? They're there to be a retail business. If they're asking you to wear a mask, whatever, what are they, a police state now? It's totally ridiculous. So the Constitution can be being dismantled. The governors and the mayors are out of control with their power.
I can tell you, not one of us ever voted for a mayor or a city council person to be our doctor and medical advisor. They don't have the training. They have nothing that qualifies them to make a decision says you have to wear a mask. They aren't even intelligent or diligent enough to do their due diligence to see beyond those gaps and look at the frontline doctors and all the truth that is out there. It's not that hard to find. Yes, you do have to go look for it. And if they're going to try to take away your constitutional rights without getting that into the mix and saying to people, you know what, our job is not to feed your fear or to do what the media is trying to make you think. Evidence says it's not appropriate to mandate anything. If you're sick, wear the darn mask. If you're not, there's no reason to wear one.
Okay, the deal is if you're sick, stay home. Everybody else has been doing that forever.
Yeah, that's just common
It's
sense.
just common sense. This is another thing, coming back to the center point. Why you got to do all this extreme stuff? Go home, relax, take care of yourself, have your loved ones take care of you, or friends, or whatever. Another thing you need to look into potentially is this Americans with Disability Act and HIPAA, and all businesses, we're starting to find out now, all businesses know about all this. They cannot ask you
Why you're exempt.
why you're exempt. They can't even ask you why you're not wearing a mask. They can't ask you. If they do, you say, well, I'm sick,
No, I'm exempt.
I'm exempt because I've got a condition. I can't breathe that well with the mask on, whatever.
You don't even have to explain it to them because that's the HIPAA violation.
Exactly.
They do not qualify to get into your privacy to know why you're exempt. The fact that you might have COPD, you might have heart arrhythmia issues, you might have only one lung from a surgery. Whatever the reason is, they have no right to ask you to reveal that level of personal information so that you can buy clothes, food, whatever.
Okay, so now these have been put out there and approved, we'll call it approved and everything, by the Supreme Court. That's pretty heavy duty. If that's backing it up, then they have no business talking to you really at all.
And they're opening themselves up to lawsuits, the mayors, the city council people, for violating your rights. And they have a right, we have a right to try to get class action suits from attorneys to sue them for violating us and overstepping the oath of their office, which is to uphold the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of their states. They do not. They are overstepping, and they can be held accountable. And we could do civil actions and make them pay till we put them into bankruptcy. They're putting us in bankruptcy. Their job was to keep the infrastructures of cities and our prosperity going, and they're killing it with their decisions to try to be our doctors. They need to be held accountable, so they'll back off and stop trying to just placate everybody. You can't placate everybody when you're in a position where you're taking the infrastructure of a whole city. You gotta say, no, the economy of this city has to stay intact.
Okay, so right
That's their
there, we're
job.
going to go here to where the controlled media is playing their game with everybody's head. They're putting out these false control narratives, the whole racism thing, they fake care of kids. And what is this thing about California's released 18,000 prisoners. And then they're griping about they're going to have to find housing for them and food, and they already had housing and food. They were supposed to be in prison.
Why don't they put masks on them if that was the issue?
Well, exactly. And so anyway, here's one of the ramifications of it, and it is one example. It's probably a lot more, is that one of these prisoners apparently was violent, or rape, or something like that. He hunted down his accuser in court and killed her. Now, what rational person in a governor or mayor capacity is allowing prisoners back out on the street? This is like New York City, Cuomo and de Blasio and the governor out in California, and Garcetti, the DA of Los Angeles County. I'm kind of repulsed to having know these people's names. Anyway, that's an example of you do these irrational things because, well, they're already in prison. So you're going to throw these people out into the public that is already locked down, and they can't necessarily go anywhere. So the guy finds her and kills her. This is just totally insane. So that governor out there, that's on him. Anything that happens, that's on him. Okay, so these are just some of the examples here. I'm going to be working off this as another platform here, and we can talk about it in other ways as far as filling the gaps of understanding.
The whole thing is about conversation.
Right. Yeah,
Say
we
that
want
as
to.
I can hear.
It's about communication, conversation. You guys watch this now. You can kick around these ideas. And so put this stuff together is what it's all about. You're trying to get to a better, more open understanding intuitively and spiritually so that all this isn't throwing you into disarray. Anyway, I enjoyed presenting this to you. I'll be doing some more next week. And Sharon's right here. She wants to talk to you again, I think.
Whoa, time to say goodbye. But if you think that we're doing this because we've got some kind of agenda and we're having fun doing this and we want to make a name for ourselves, I want you to know we'd rather be having a picnic right now. We would much, much rather be reading a book, a really good book. And we're only doing this because we figure, you know, that whole idea, we see something, it's clear. And the idea that if you see something and you know something, you're obligated to be the one to come forward. Don't keep saying somebody else do this, somebody else tell people this truth. And love compels you to do just that, to come forward and to take the risk to tell the truth. And just hope that people are listening and that they open their minds and their hearts, and then they become bigger, brighter people than they were before. And you've helped them see that they are not alone, because you are not alone, and that the truth is what will set you free. And yes, the confirmation that currently the truth is not pretty, it's not beautiful. And the empowerment is to know it, so that you know where to lay the axe, to know that there's something you can indeed do. Empowerment is always the key. That's what our whole Constitution is about. And for me, all my motivations go strongly, strongly, strongly to helping parents and children have a future, for parents to do the things that will give a legacy to the child whose eyes they looked into when they were born, and help them to have a world that is worth living, that is filled with quality and filled with a prosperity. We always want to give our kids things we didn't quite have. We can't do it at the rate we're going. We have to make some big changes, and we're the ones who are going to have to do it because everything is falling apart around us. We already know that. I mean, I'm not telling you anything there that you'd say, oh, Sharon, I don't know what you're talking about. You do know what I'm talking about. You may not understand why it's happening. And hopefully by listening to this and contemplating it, you can connect more dots and see a bigger picture and recognize, so that's what's going on. That makes sense. And my empowerment is your empowerment, and your empowerment is your neighbor's empowerment. And neighbors coming together are a community of empowerment, and communities coming together can become a city of empowerment, and so forth. You get the idea. Light and love. Would you like to give a closeout statement, or do you want me to close it out completely? Okay. One of the things we just wanted to point out that we're going to get a good picture of this, and we're going to load it up as a JPEG for those who really want to be able to see it. We recognize, in looking at the cameras on the side, that even though we've got a good clear picture going here, you need to actually be able to blow this up better to be able to read the handwriting, because there's a lot there. So we will load up some kind of image that you will be able to work with, and so you can read the list for yourself.
And I will send out more links.
Oh, and we'll put out more links so that you can make your homework easier to do, because that's helpful. We can help each other. Helping each other to make it easier to know the truth is an act of love too, don't you think? Till next week on the Edge of Truth Radio. Okay, Director, do we hit the stop?